Hello and welcome to For Future Generations, episode 12. It is Sunday, the 13th of April. Hope you're having a good Palm Sunday. Happy Palm Sunday to everybody. We definitely had a good Sunday. Well, all things withstanding, kids were sick, but I was able to make it to church, got home and spent some time with them. But we're very happy to be here. Sean, I'm joined by my good friend Sean. Sean, how are you, man?
I'm good. Palm Sunday was good. Lower back problems notwithstanding, but still showed up and received the means of grace and had a good time. So,
Amen. Amen. Man, it's always something. There's always going to be a good reason to not go to church, but it's never going to be a good enough reason to not go to church, especially on the high holy days. I know some people will take issue with that, but I think if they can have a whole month for celebrating sodomy, we can have high holy days as well. But today's a very special episode. We're going to be joined by a friend of mine who is Benjamin Alpaca. Ben is a friend of mine from before everything blew up. He's local to me, and I knew him, and I know him, and I love him, and I cherish him, and nothing you can say will change my mind. So, Ben, happy to have you, and welcome to the show. We will not be
Hi.
showing his face. He is going to cling to whatever fringes of anonymity he can, but the alpaca will stand in for him. But Ben, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, thank you. I'm a little sick, uh,
Oh no.
but but I'm all
Well,
right. I'm already mostly over it.
wonderful, wonderful. Well, everything in its time. I know our kids hang out together, so you've probably got whatever my kids have got. I haven't gotten it yet,
Probably.
so I've got that to look forward to. It's going to be lots of fun. All right, but so as I mentioned, Ben, you and I met before. Um, before all of this stuff came to prominence, we were at a mutual friend of ours, a backyard barbecue of sorts, and we were rubbing elbows. And you're German, and I have a German ancestry, and I lived in Germany for a good many years of my childhood. And so our mutual friend came along and said, "Hey, y'all should meet each other and hang out." And we did, and we hit it off quite nicely. And I want to say that was like 2 years ago or something. It's been a while, hasn't it?
hmm I think it was
Yeah,
in summer of 2023, the first time we
yeah.
met.
So it was a while ago. It was a while ago, and despite what some people may want to believe or say, you did not strike me as a hateful bigot at the time. and so, but so for those of you who know the scandal and the issues, what happened and who got upset about it, um, you're here for that. You're listening, you're tuning in because you're like, man, this was a big debacle. Everybody from Doug Wilson to James White to Jeff Durbin to Joe Boot to some guy whose name I can't remember, they all had something to say about it. But you know, we'll touch on the controversy. But before we wanted to get into that, I just wanted to spend a moment to get to know who is Ben. I know Ben. He's a personal friend of mine. I've known him for several years now. But Ben, if you would just kind of give us the 5 second on who are you and where do you come from?
My name is Benjamin, and I'm actually human, even though my last name is Alpaca. Um, and Jeff and I met 2 years ago. That's when I moved to Texas. I've lived in Germany the greatest part of my life. I'm I lived there 28 years of my life, and my wife is American, and so we moved to America about 2 years ago. And before that, I attended Tobias's church, and for about 6, 7, or 8 years, basically since its founding. Um, and yeah, I've become a Christian when I was 14 years old. So yeah, that's my story.
So a good long Christian heritage. You come from at least a nominally Christian family, but you found a
yeah,
good solid church in Tobias's church. So
yeah,
despite what Tobias says in his video that thankfully got pulled from the internet, he in fact did know you quite well. You were not just some guy that he had interactions with, but you were somebody that he was intimately acquainted with.
yeah. We had
Mhm.
many conversations. There was a time where after church we would talk every time after church we would talk for about an hour. I've been to his house many times having lunch. There was a time when we went out to eat together in Frankfurt, Germany, every Wednesday, along with other brothers from church. But I was
Uh,
always there. He was always there.
okay.
So there we know each other quite well. Uh-huh.
So this is a man that at the time you would have definitely considered him a close friend.
Yeah, uh-huh. Which
Mhm.
is kind of why it's surprising. In his hit piece, he made a point out of me not really being his close friend or so. I,
Mhm.
I wasn't offended or so. I just chuckled at it. But
Yeah.
I mean, come on, dude. We had a lot of interactions.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. And it not to look into motivations. You cannot read the hearts of men, but it would seem like much more of a betrayal for someone who is a close friend to go running to international people with international platforms, tattling on someone that you are friends with in order to boost your own platform, which is certainly what happened. But we
Mhm.
can understand why he would not have liked to have had that appearance. But you talked about you're married, your wife, whom I've met, and your children, who I adore. Your wife, M, we'll just call her. Um, how did you two meet? You're in Germany, she's an American. How did that come together?
Through a common friend, a good friend of mine married her best friend. Um, and they put us in touch, and then actually we got married before they got married. So
Oh wow!
yeah, so we've been
so they
married for 6 years now, and
so
we're
they
expecting
saw the
number
two of you and said they're a good fit. So they put the two of you together.
they didn't even comment on how good of a fit we were. They just I had this friend who was meeting this girl, and they each had a single friend, so they just put us in touch. There wasn't really a comment on how good of a
Okay.
fit we were,
Oh,
but
so
it ended up.
were y'all like the chaperones of sorts? Is that kind of how that was going?
Well, it worked out very greatly. We are very happily married, and we're expecting baby number 5 soon. So
Fantastic! Congratulations. And
thank you.
and y'all have been married for how many years now?
6.
6 years. Okay.
Mhm.
So 6 years. All right. And yeah, for those of you who are watching, I see we've got a couple of people. If y'all have questions, on Rumble or on YouTube, you can put those in Facebook. I think we'll pick up the comments as well. Drop those comments in, and we will get to them at the end of the show, unless it's something super pertinent, in which case, you know, we might. We might interrupt our show just to make sure that those get out.
Yeah,
But
if it's relevant in the exact moment, then yeah, it might get brought up right then and there.
yeah, we have been known to do that before. All right, let's see. Just making sure that the streams are working on the other platforms. All right. So, Ben, you said after y'all got married, you did y'all was she living in Germany or did y'all move to Germany? How did that
Yeah,
transition occur?
yeah. She moved to me in Germany.
Hmm.
Um, but then eventually we ended up, after a few years of living in Germany, we ended up in America. After
Hmm.
all this COVID stuff was over, mostly over,
Yeah.
we ended up in America.
Hmm. So COVID has a lot to do with, why you ended up in America, why you ended up at the church that you were in, Tobias's church. Tobias, for his dreadful and shameful treatment of you was actually very good on the COVID lockdowns. So
Absolutely,
if you could, speak to that for a little bit, please.
Yeah, so I had been a member way before COVID broke out. But when COVID broke out, we were basically one of very few churches in Germany that spoke out against COVID tyranny at all. Most churches just complied. You could probably count them on your two hands how many churches there were that had a somewhat decent stance on resisting COVID tyranny and worshiping the Lord, even though there's a virus going around, and meeting anyway. And Tobias actually was one of the leading voices in all of this. He came up with a declaration on civil liberties. It's called the Frankfurt Declaration of Civil Liberties, which is probably where Tobias's name was dropped, or somewhat famously dropped, in America for the first time. The Frankfurt Declaration on Civil Liberties, basically saying that the church is supposed to meet despite a virus going around, and he did a decent job. He did a good job with resisting all this tyranny and so on. Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So give the goose and the gander their due, so to speak. Mm-hmm. He did stand up against the lockdowns, and he did stand up against tyranny, and kudos to him for that. Good man for that. But so now that we're getting into it a little bit, everybody wants to know, what was the meme, and what was the thing, what was the face that launched 1,000 ships, so to speak. But before we get into that, I want to just preface this by asking you, okay, do you hate Jews?
I hope every Jew gets saved and comes to faith in Jesus Christ, and that I can worship with him in heaven. That is my hope for every single Jew.
Okay. So as a Christian, we would definitely say, that's not hatred. What greater love can any man have than to desire his friend to be saved, right? But if you tell a Jew that you wish them a very Merry Christmas and a happy conversion, they will say that is hate. So
yes,
that's it depends on who you ask, but definitely on this show, and Ben, as you've stated, there is no hatred for the Jewish people, the Jewish diaspora. We don't necessarily like everything you do, and we wish you would all become Christians and turn from your satanic worship. But that is because we love you, not because we hate you. So anyhow, with that being said, this is the meme. So give us a quick and dirty on what happened, and then we'll show the meme. Just to put it as gently as you can, there were some doubts that you had about some things you had been told. Kind of tell us what was going on there, and why Tobias was involved in this interaction.
So I doubted certain historical events that happened or allegedly happened during World War II for probably 10 years or so. But it never got to the point where I was really entirely red-pilled like I'm now. It was more like, yeah, it's probably wartime propaganda, probably everything exaggerated. It never got anywhere, though, even if the numbers are off, that's still pretty bad. It wasn't until probably 2 years ago that I swallowed more red pills and did some more research. Elon Musk bought Twitter, that probably
that was a turning point. Yeah, turning point for a lot of us.
For a lot of us, and I'm just a normal guy who is mostly convinced by internet memes, and that played a big role. Internet memes are very convincing to me. But obviously, also historical research. I probably spent about 100 hours just looking at history, looking at personal accounts of people, looking at pictures we have of that time of the 1940s in Germany, and yeah, and I eventually got to the point where I was so red-pilled, where I came to the conclusion we have been entirely lied to with who was good, who was evil, what was the reason for the entire war, why did the entire world decide to get involved in this war that was supposed to be a more local conflict, or should have been a more local conflict. Yeah, so I even though 10 years ago or so I swallowed the first red pill, it wasn't until 2 years ago or so that I swallowed the entire bottle of red pills.
Mhm. Mhm. So, there are several things that don't make sense with the narrative as stated, not the least of which is the fact that all of the death camps, so-called, were discovered by the communists as they were overrunning Germany, and all of the camps discovered by the Allies, including the one in which my great-grandfather was imprisoned, were just work camps. That's not to say that they were nice places. They were not beach resorts. You were there as a prisoner. You were doing labor, whether you wanted to or not. But that was normal in every single country in the war, that prisoners were doing wartime labor. And the British, who liberated the camp at which my great grandfather was a prisoner, they discovered that it was just a labor camp. So let's go ahead and show the meme. So this meme right here, the mother and daughter are talking, and the daughter asks, "Moms, what's the Holocaust?" And the mom says, "It was that one time Jews had to do manual labor, so they claimed it killed them." Now, some people might have a very dark and twisted sense of humor and might find this very funny. Some people might take it just at face value and say, "Yeah, that's what happened." They were in labor camps, and the stories that came out of those labor camps were that it was torture. That is the meme right there. So go ahead, Ben, and tell us, what was, how did this meme become public? Did you put this on Twitter? Did you, share it to the church's Facebook account? What was the thing that caused this to become this focus of so many celebrity preachers?
So I texted the meme to two people that I beforehand had talked to about my developing views on World War II and the history behind it. So these were all people, two people that
You've covered your microphone. Start over. These were all people
that I had, who knew that I don't follow the normal narrative, who already knew that I was seriously questioning things and no longer believing certain parts of the history that we are told what happened.
So
and
two people, you say?
Two people, one of which was a church member that just laughed at the meme and thought it was funny, and that I'm still friends with. And the other one was Tobias, that I texted this to, who I also had conversations with before about my developing views. And at first he seemed pretty open to it, I basically told him I no longer believe a lot of the stuff we've been told that happened. And his first response was, "Yeah, we've been lied to a lot about COVID and so on, so I get it." He didn't really say much about it, but he didn't really seem concerned. He basically said, "Yeah, we've been lied to about COVID. Just another conspiracy theory." At first he didn't seem really concerned or so, maybe he was, but he didn't show it to me. So that's what eventually, we had a few conversations on this topic, and that's what eventually led me to share this meme with him, because he never expressed any concern about my developing views before, and I thought he was pretty open about it. And that's when I send him the meme. I thought he would understand the humor behind it, and just laugh at it and forget about it. But I didn't know at that time that sharing this meme would lead to a church split and a war. So there we go.
I want to ask a qualifying question. So you had said Tobias seemed open, but then the example you gave was more like COVID related and kind of conspiracy theories in general. Did Tobias seem open to questioning specific events within World War II?
At least he wasn't opposed to it. I just told him I have developing views, and his response was, "Yeah, we've been lied to so much about COVID." But basically, his statement was, "Since we've been lied to so much about COVID, it's very possible we've been lied to about other things too." That's what I meant to say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
not a full-throated endorsement, but definitely, not the concern, the deep concern that he seemed to be showing after he received this meme from you.
Yeah, the concern didn't start until after the meme, as far as I can remember.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, what was the first thing that you realized that this meme had broken the atmosphere, so to speak? That it had become public information. Was it? Did he tell you he was going to share this with someone? Did someone start talking about this and mention you? How did you first learn about that?
So he immediately responded to the meme and said that he didn't like it. So he was honest about it, I gotta say. He didn't like the meme, and he told me about it.
In the text messages, he said that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right away.
That wasn't...
Okay. So when he was saying earlier, he was open to questions about veracity of historical events. That was not the meme itself. That was before the meme. But when the meme gets launched, he immediately responds and says, "I'm concerned, brother." Right?
Yeah. Suddenly there's concern, and he told me he's concerned about it. He believes there's probably a sinful attitude behind this. And I responded, it's a meme that brings a certain point across that I already explained to you. I don't believe it happened. So the meme is mocking a narrative that I don't believe in. It's not mocking suffering people, which is always the point of a meme. The memes always have one point. They have one message they want to convey. You can't take everything in a meme at face value. The same with a parable that Christ told us parables, and parables always have one message behind it. Yeah. Christ told us the parable to always pray in Luke 17, I think it is. And Christ compares God to an evil judge that the widow appeals to. And what is the point of the parable? It is, that we are always to pray. The point is not that God is an evil judge, and that's how I understand a meme. It has one message.
Yeah.
Tobias knew, I don't believe the narrative. I don't buy the narrative. And that's the point of the meme, that the killing is just a claim. I had hoped he would just and get over it. Yeah.
Yeah. So there are, every parable of Christ can be twisted. Just the other day, I was talking with a brother who was telling me about how he had joined this cult, and the example that he had used for the cult was, the parable of the pearl of great price. I have found a pearl of great price, and I explained to him in some very coarse and vulgar language. You can use the pearl of great price as a justification for having an affair with your secretary, because you found this wonderful girl, and she's so much better than the one you've got back home. So you sell all that you have, you get divorced and all that, so you can live with this girl that you met at work. And it's any meme or parable or legend or story can be twisted by those who have a desire to do so. But the point of the meme is that it is a disbelief of a narrative.
Yes,
not
which
not a
Tobias
mocking of
knew about.
suffering. Yeah,
Yeah.
not a sincere belief that the suffering occurred, but a sincere belief that it did not occur. And so the mocking is not of legitimate suffering, but of a grievance narrative, so to speak.
Yeah.
So where did Tobias take this thing? He didn't just receive the thing, concern troll you, and then harass you until you stop talking to him. He went somewhere with this, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, there were more private conversations. He told me about his concern. There were phone calls. There and there was more stuff I sent to him, and more cracking down on. I don't believe this narrative. I believe we've been completely lied to. One of which was also a video of a speech by Hitler, where he talks about the moral decay of the Weimar Republic. And how he wants to get Germany out of that state again.
Mhm.
And I
Whether
texted
you
him.
believe his speech was sincere or not, these are the things, at least, that he was saying.
Yeah, and I said about this video, every Christian should agree with this, and that's when it exploded in his mind somehow.
Uh-huh.
That's when his concern was at the highest level suddenly. That's when he also contacted Joel and said, here, Benjamin, the guy who was my church member, who's now at your church, is sending me this kind of stuff. And he was texting back and forth with Joel. So it still wasn't public at that point.
Mm-hmm.
He talked to me, he talked to Joel. And then when he traveled to America for, I don't even remember the reason why, but he went to visit Apologia Church in Arizona. And that's when he talked to James White and Doug Wilson about this. And they, in turn, published it on their blog, on their YouTube show. And that's when it got pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
So for the sake of nailing down the timeline, he first shared it during that visit. That was the first time he ever shared it outside of the group text that you had going on. And then from there, these pastors just put it on their blogs.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
They still remained anonymous. They didn't mention names. However, James White threatened to mention names.
Yeah. The moment is infamous right now of James White saying, "Don't make me name names, because I will." And then when he's questioned on it, saying, "Well, I didn't have anyone in particular in mind," and it's like, "Sir, you are lying."
So clearly, Tobias mentioned your name right off the rip.
To these gentlemen,
to them, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Definitely Joel's name. I'm just a nobody, so they wouldn't have known me. I don't know if he mentioned my name, but definitely Joel's name. And James White and Doug Wilson took this to the public, but they didn't mention either my or Joel's name. They wanted, but as I said, James White threatened to mention names. And Doug Wilson even put the meme on his blog.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can go to that right now. I have the blog and Mayblog, at least a section of it right here, where he says, "Our assigned task is to present every man perfect in Christ Jesus. And so what if a parishioner periodically gets drunk and starts spewing hatred towards Jews?" Ben, are you in the habit of getting drunk?
No, I've never been drunk in my entire life, even though I'm German and I love beer. But
okay, so that's a little bit of poisoning the well there. He says, "Those
Yes.
sins, if unrepented, are going to keep such a person out of the kingdom of God." All right, so if you get drunk and spew hatred towards Jews, that will keep you out of the kingdom of God. So far, we are 1 for 2. You do not get drunk. Do you spew hatred toward Jews?
No, I never have.
Yeah. Okay. So is doubting the veracity of certain historical events spewing of hatred? That's a very interesting take on the matter. But he says, it is our assigned task to deal with it. I have a pastor friend who had a parishioner move away. So obviously he's talking about Tobias, who then came under some bad influences. I'm not sure, but he might be talking about me. And started sending around memes like, Mom, what's the Holocaust? It's that one time Jews had to do manual labor, so they claimed it killed them. That is the kind of thing that requires cold law and hot gospel. You can't fix it with sunglasses and a joke about white boy summer. The task is to keep these people from going to hell. So, his statement in no uncertain terms is that if you share this meme, you are going to hell.
Absolutely, yes.
If you doubt the veracity of a historical event, one of the least studied and most accepted historical events of all time, then you will go to hell.
Yes.
And he poisons the well by equating it with other sins. Other sins, when those other sins have not been present at all in the aforementioned, in the mentioned, activity that was going on here. So, so Wilson writes about this a few times, and James White dedicates several shows to this. Tobias goes on several other shows. I'm not going to play this just for the sake of time, but you have James White, for all the good things that he has done, was just on an absolute tear. And it seemed like for a while there was not a show that went by that he could not be talking about the meme scandal and the anti-Semitism in the right-wing Christian Reformed world. And
ostensibly Reformed.
All of this brought about by one lowly church member who went to one church in Central Texas. So let's not forget that a lot of this has to do with a certain pastor in Georgetown, Joel Webbon, who has a church there, and he's getting very prominent, and his prominence might actually have something to do with why people like Wilson and White and Durbin might be getting a little nervous. Do you care to opine about that at all, Ben?
Yeah, I definitely believe that played a role. I mean, his ministry has skyrocketed. He has hundreds of, several 100,000 followers. Some of his tweets get millions of views, and he is not without controversy. Definitely, a lot of his stuff gets clipped by Right Wing Watch, which often gets several million views. So he has a lot of haters. He has had a protester at his house and so on. So it gives the impression that I, as the just lowly church member, was not the primary target. The target, I was kind of the means to get to the really big target.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as Wilson wrote in that article, the bad influences that he has recently come under. I mean, he was almost certainly making a veiled jab at Joel Webbon.
Yes, absolutely. And he also said in his blog, you can't fix it with a joke about white boy summer, which was just a few days before Joel Webbon was at the conference in Ogden, where he had made a joke about white boy summer and sunglasses. So that was definitely something that was going on in Doug Wilson's mind there. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So it seems like what's actually going on is this is a proxy war, sort of like the conflict in Ukraine is really just a proxy war between the United States and Russia over the hegemony of Europe. This seems like the meme debacle and the Benjamin Alpaca, who is just a small guy who has a day job, has a wife and kids. I mean, he's got a work schedule to keep up with. He's got doctor's appointments to go to. He's got plumbing to fix. He's got a car that sometimes breaks down. I mean, I helped you fix a lawnmower. That these are all things that a normal man deals with in his everyday life. This is not the kind of person that one would expect the ire of all the online reform world to be turned against. So perhaps this is really just a way of fighting against Ogden and against Georgetown, two places that are setting themselves up in the Moscow vein, trying to do what Doug Wilson very rightly did in his area. But when they do it, somehow that's not legitimate.
Yeah.
So what was the threat that was brought against you? What was it that they, all of this hubbub, all of this talk, what was it they wanted from you?
Well, they said I need to be excommunicated. I eventually got an email from Tobias calling me to repent. The threat was that he will inform the church in Germany about my impenitence and my sins, and he will tell them to no longer associate with me. And these were friendships that I had worked on for like 10 years. So he is the pastor of that church in Germany where I still had a lot of connections, a lot of friendships with. And he threatened to basically let them know to no longer associate with me because of my impenitence. That was the threat on that side. Joel Webbon was supposed to excommunicate me, which he thankfully outright rejected right away. And so, but they definitely put pressure on Joel to excommunicate me. So those were the threats. Those were what they wanted, the things they wanted to do to me.
Mm-hmm.
What really bothers me the most about that is that these guys that are threatening you, Jeff had mentioned you're just a working class father, and these guys are pastors who, they get paid to do all this stuff. This is what they do with the money they are given. They just go online and they try to shut down people who are just hardworking people, good members of their churches, and that just bothers me to no end.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So my initial response, I got that email from Tobias where he specifically mentioned the James White video where he threatened to mention names, and also Doug Wilson's blog post about that meme, and basically called me to repentance. Here's older guys, really experienced pastors who all agree you need to repent. You need to repent of your views on World War II and on your hatred of the Jews, and that's what he said. He sent links of James White's video, Doug Wilson's blog post, and my initial reaction was I did not even want to respond because the tone of the email was already pretty bad, and I had the feeling if this goes on, because it apparently had already gotten public because James White knew about it, Doug Wilson knew about it, I already had a pretty bad feeling about it. And so I pled the fifth. I thought it's probably better to not interact too much. Don't reveal too much of yourself. And also because I didn't want a war. I already had a pretty bad feeling about this, that this would blow up into something I didn't want to blow it up into. And so my initial response was to just not respond to the email. And then soon later, there was a follow-up by email by Tobias. Since you have chosen to not respond to me, I will inform the church in Germany of your sins, to no longer associate with you. And at that point, because I had long-term relationships with those folks that I didn't want to lose, I said, yeah, okay. I eventually responded. I told him I'll take a few days and then I'll respond. and eventually gave him the response, we can have a Zoom meeting where we would discuss these things. And that's the infamous Zoom call.
Mm-hmm. So first off, this Zoom call, it has been alleged by some that this was done intentionally, surreptitiously, in order to entrap him. What is the? If I'm not mistaken, I believe I'm the person who told you to record the Zoom call because you had told me that it was coming up.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And
you were one of the few people. There were several people who also had a pretty bad feeling about this and admonished me to record the whole thing. And I also already had a pretty bad feeling about it, and so I agreed and said, yeah, I definitely need to record this, just because of the tone in Tobias's emails, which was already pretty bad, and where he already kind of twisted a few of my words. I had already explained to him several times there is no hatred, sinful hatred in my heart. Doubting historical narrative is not hatred, and believing somebody is peculiar pernicious, or a people group is peculiarly pernicious, is also not hatred, or a sinful hatred. And so he already was kind of twisting those things in the email that preceded the Zoom call, which kind of let my alert bells go off. This he is already kind of twisting what you said. So I had the alert bells, and then I had several people, including you, Jeff, tell me you should probably do a recording of this just as a backup in case this blows up and you need to defend your reputation, you need to defend yourself, because this is going up into high-profile pastors with big platforms, and there may be people who want to destroy your reputation. Make sure you have some evidence. I had a few people tell me this, admonish me to do it, and because I also had a pretty bad feeling, I agreed, and that's why I ended up recording it.
To keep in mind, these pastors that we're afraid of include people like Jeff Durbin, who surreptitiously recorded not a conversation such as this, but actually a confessional. And then when he started having fallout with the person, and personally, I think of the people involved, I'm on Jeff Durbin's side of this, but he surreptitiously released the recording of the confessional, which is not something a pastor is allowed to do.
You should be derobed over that.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, the guy doesn't wear robes anyway. The guy doesn't even wear collared shirts.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
But
but for the hypocritical stance of people to say, well, you shouldn't have recorded this, which is something that Tobias and others have said, while they themselves participate in this kind of recording and surreptitious releasing of those recordings without warning and without due cause, is a very different thing. But just to clear the name of one person in particular, Joel is implicated in this. And they say, Joel, you bad man. You recorded this in order to trap us. Here's the conversation you had with Joel. Just wanted to let you know, a screen recording of the note, not planning on publish it, but if we need evidence of what was said, we have a backup. He says, hey, glad you did that. Please keep it handy. Hopefully we'll never have to use it. So
and that's a very important text message,
Uh,
a very important screenshot, a very good receipt. Maybe you want to put it up again just for a second. I want to talk about it for just a second. So that was just, I think, like an hour or two after the, it actually looks like a few hours after the Zoom call had been over. I let him know. People accused Joel of, you showed your best side because you knew about the recording. And so I thought this is a very good receipt that he did not.
These are people who obviously did not watch the recording, because Joel was, he was relaxed and he was in his t-shirt and his hair wasn't quite combed. It's like, I'm pretty sure if Joel was planning some super secret evil takedown, he would have been a little more put together. I mean, I know that I certainly would have been, right? I mean, look at me right now. I mean, I'm in a collared shirt. I've got my hair combed. I know I'm recording, right?
Yeah.
You always look better than what I'm wearing, for sure.
And so here we see Joel did not know about it, and we also see there was never any ill will towards Tobias. So even though there had already been emails that were kind of letting our alarm bells go off, and I was wondering where this is going, but there was never any ill will, and we both said I said not planning on publishing it. It's just a backup evidence, and Pastor Joel says hopefully we'll never have to use it. There was never any ill will towards Tobias. This was not us setting him up into a Zoom call in order to destroy him. That's how people, including himself, Tobias himself, try to frame it, and it's not true. There was never any ill will towards him or trying to set him up to catch him in a lie. That did not happen.
Yeah. So just to keep in mind, this is a man who was an erstwhile friend, right? Tobias is someone that you considered a friend. You were sharing with him spicy memes that would put you in jail in Germany because you trusted him not to go running to the authorities.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, it looks like that's exactly what he did. Not the authorities that you were afraid of, but authorities that would be able to hurt you nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
So the infamous recording that we're talking about, perhaps we should pull a few clips. These are some clips that were released a little bit by some friends of ours on YouTube who were graciously covering for us during this entire thing. Doxings and attacks on our guys are very interesting times because they lead to they lead to some very interesting alliances, and people come out of the woodworks and people start standing up for each other. But here is a clip from the video that I think we should go over first. This is drawn from the 2.5 hour conversation. I have the full recording of that conversation, but we're just going to show a few clips. And these clips were put out several months ago, so Ben's name is edited out. So when you hear the bleeps, that is not, in fact, Tobias swearing. He is not calling people names. That is just the editing out of Ben's name, trying to provide whatever kind of cover we can for him. But, since then, he has been fairly fully doxxed by James White and Doug Wilson both. But here is that video.
And Joe Boot and Jeff Durbin, all the guys, the two of you brothers, love until recently. They say you are in grave sin. Needs to be put under church discipline. Joe needs to step down if he doesn't do it.
So that is Tobias saying, Benjamin, that is the bleep, Benjamin needs to be put under church discipline, and Joel needs to step down if he will not do it. Now, in his recording on in his debut video on Eschatology Matters, he said quite flatly that at no point had he or anyone called for church discipline.
Yeah.
And it is because of this recording right here of that phone call that video got pulled down by Eschatology Matters. I mean, I haven't had them say definitively it was this part, but there were several outright lies from Tobias. One of which was, we have never called for church discipline. And in this video, he says not only himself, but James White, Joe Boot, Jeff Durbin, that all of them are calling for church discipline of a church that they are not members or elders in, but they are calling for your church discipline. And if Joel will not do it, then he needs to step down.
Yeah. Another big thing was, and that was not discussed anywhere online that I have seen it. So that was one big thing. Apparently he never called for church discipline, and in his hit piece, he said over and over again that never happened. And somebody counted it. I haven't fact checked it, but it's actually 8 times in the Zoom call that he calls for excommunication. 8 times it happened, and so that was, that was pretty much an outright lie. The other thing was, he portrayed in his hit piece, or he said that I had said, Benjamin believes that all Jews should go to concentration camps because they don't work. What I actually said in the Zoom call was, yeah, I generally believe that Jews don't do honest work. Many of them don't. I qualified it explicitly. Of course, that doesn't mean every single one of them, but generally, Jewish culture leads them to not do honest work. Rather live off usury, that kind of stuff. And then I also did say I believe concentration camps were a justified wartime measure because Germany was at war and they were in danger of being overrun by the Red Army, who would rape all their women and kill all their children. And so
Which
they needed,
did.
which
Which
eventually
they did.
happened. Yeah. So they needed a measure to protect themselves, and in wartime, internal enemies are the worst enemies. And so they put every racial Jew into concentration camps. Why every racial Jew? Well, because in wartime you can forge things. You can just claim to not be a Jew or so. So they had to go into the ancestry records, to make sure
And-
there's no.
And this sounds like a very, very nefarious and evil thing. How could they do such a thing? But the United States, the bastion of great freedom and beauty that is, the greatest country that's ever exists, so to speak, we did the same thing with people of Japanese heritage.
Yeah, and so
we didn't care if you've been here for 30 years. We don't care if you've got American citizenship. You got scooped up and you got put into interior, camps inside the country. You had no outside communication because there was this very real fear of spying and espionage.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a justified fear, and so you need justified measures. And so what happened is I said in the Zoom call, I did at one point, I generally don't believe Jews do honest work. And number 2, concentration camps were a justified wartime measure. In his hit piece, in Tobias's hit piece, he combined those 2 sentences, put them into one, and totally misrepresented me and said, Benjamin believes because Jews don't work, they need to be sent off to concentration camps. So he combined those.
And one is a very broad statement. I mean, you can say all Cretans are liars, evil beasts, lazy bellies, while also maintaining a realization that it's not literally every single one, that there's not one Cretan who has a work ethic. You can make a broad statement like that. You can make a broad statement like Jews in general do not have labor jobs. They make their money off of usury and, loan sharking and, mob connections and, pimping and gambling, all of these things which were illegal and which were highly, highly done by Jews in Europe and in New York. If you look at the numbers, even in the United States, this was very standard Jewish behavior. That's not to say that, the Jewish watchmaker who's, just a little guy who likes putting gears inside of watch cases, that he's not an honest worker. That isn't the conversation we're having here. Generalities can be generally true, and they don't make specific exceptions. Specific exceptions do not break that general reality.
Yeah, exactly. And I also, in the Zoom call, several times I said, because they send prisoners of war Jews to concentration camps, just anyone who was racially a Jew, But obviously, there were some sent to concentration camps who were not spies, who were not allies of the Red Army. And so I said specifically, several times, qualifying it, I feel terrible and awful for those who were sent to the camps who weren't spies, especially the women and children. What Tobias said in his hit piece then was
You're covering up your microphone. We can't really hear you.
what Tobias then said in his hit piece was Benjamin said that now I lost my thread. Hold on. Benjamin said that I'm sorry, I lost my thread right now. So I said I feel awful for everyone who got treated unjustly, because in the concentration camps they put everyone in there who was racially a Jew. Yeah. So I made it very clear in the Zoom call that I feel awful for everyone who was then sent there, even though he was not a spy. So
Right.
what Tobias then said,
and the same should be true for Americans, who saw Japanese Americans who were put into concentration camps who did nothing wrong. You can on one hand feel very sorry for them, while at the same time being fully aware of the fact that this was a very justified wartime action. In order to preserve the nation and the people, certain people had to be dispossessed, had to be removed, physically removed from their homes and their businesses, and put into a camp, which is not nice. Even the nicest camp in the world is not home. No matter where you go, if you're being dragged away from your home and your business and your community, that is not fun.
Yeah. And then I said I feel awful for those who weren't spies, but because of the wartime measure were sent to the camps, especially the women and children, is what I said. What Tobias then said in his hit piece, he just said, okay, maybe the women and children, that shouldn't have been done to them, but everyone else, he was okay with that. He was just really clearly twisting my words and taking something I somewhat said in that direction, clearly twisting it. It was just full of misrepresentations and lies. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, well, there was also something else that came out of this recording, was that it was a mask off moment in a lot of ways. Tobias said the quiet part out loud, which is, if you go with these people, if you align yourself with Ogden, if you align yourself with Joel, there will be an alliance formed against you. So Moscow and James White and Apologia to a lesser extent, but mostly Moscow, have been using their bully pulpit as a way of keeping out the people that they disagree with, and the removal of privilege. You no longer have the blessing of the Pope if you go your own way. So this is something that was said in the recording that was then very much denied later. But let's go ahead and listen to this section right here.
You can say, okay, those men, they separate from me, yeah, but why? Are they just stupid? Or do they maybe have some point? Is there something to really think about? Because if they separated from you 1.5 years ago, I think that would have bothered you a lot. So who changed in those 1.5 years? Well, you did. And you can say, yeah, we are enlightened now. Finally, we see what those dummies don't see. There is and it is possible. I don't want to. No. I'm just saying, it's possible that an alliance will forge against you guys, and I would support that. I believe what you're doing right now, and I'm not saying what Joe said to you, but what is happening in your circles. People who would go to those conferences and so on. It is evil. It is dangerous, and I will fight it. And many men are on my side. Many men that are proven for decades. And I don't understand.
Are conferences evil?
Well, I think some things that are said there are evil, and I believe that that this is something, people that are real racists and real anti-Semites, they will find a home there. They will say, no, our views are not really challenged. In fact, we hear some things that really fit our view quite well.
So, very interesting there. Not only that he makes mention of an alliance being forged against Joel. He's speaking primarily to Joel there. He says an alliance may be forged, and he's speaking as someone with inside information there. An alliance may be forged against you, and that is something I will support. But then he seems to give the benefit of the doubt. He says, maybe real racists and real anti-Semites will find a home there. So at the same time, he wants to have his cake and eat it too. He's at multiple times in this recording, he grants that you are not a real racist and that you are not a real anti-Semite, but that maybe the real anti-Semites and the real racists won't be driven away. But at the same time, calls for your excommunication and for Joel to step down. A very, very bizarre kind of situation there. But this alliance that he's referring to is something that absolutely we've seen in the last year has been forged. An alliance of Moscow and, Apologia, Joe Boot, people coming out. And this alliance was made most clear in the signing of the Antioch Declaration, a document that supposedly had been in the works for a long, long time, and yet when it was released was full of errors, not the least of which were grammatical, punctuational, and spelling errors. For a document that had been in the works for such a long time, it sure did look like something that had been rushed to the presses.
Something just side note. I was talking to a friend of mine who watches every week, and when I said who we were going to have on this week, he was like, man, that entire Antioch Declaration exists because of this one guy's meme. And it's true. We make a lot of jokes about being in the meme wars, but how many people can say that their meme is the front line of the war? I mean, this is a true meme war. We're talking about an international incident over one meme, so I think it's quite the
Tobias's Tobias's response would be, well, there's so much more behind it. First of all, there's a sinful hatred and attitude in Benjamin's heart, and then generally the entire movement behind it. So the meme is that would be Tobias's response probably. Well, there's so much more behind it. It's not just a meme. It is Benjamin's heart, his sinful attitude, which we have shown to him a million times in the Zoom call and so on. There is no sinful attitude. It should have been the end. When I said in the Zoom call, I did not mean the point of the meme is not to make fun of suffering. And that was never my intention. Even at the end of the Zoom call, Joel specifically asked me, hey, Benjamin, can you tell Tobias again? I'm sorry if that's how you understood the meme. And I said, yes, I never meant to make suffering fun of suffering people. I never meant to do that. It was just to bring those 2 points across. I do believe that as a general truth, Jews do not engage in honest labor. And number 2, I do not believe that the big thing happened in the 1940s. So that should have been the end of it. Yeah, love believes all things. But apparently Tobias thought he is the judge of my heart and the judge of everyone's heart. And he was convinced there must be some hatred. Yeah, I was already guilty in his mind. He just needed to find the right words and so on to kind of get me to say the right thing where he can say there's actual hatred in my heart. Yeah, but I never said anything like that. And yeah, because there is no sinful hatred. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the meme itself isn't saying, it's not making fun of specific suffering. It's saying that a very specific type of suffering didn't actually happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
On that note, Jeff, you can correct me if this isn't a good time, but I wanted to go over which specific events would you say you deny? Because you had shared with us a very helpful graph, which I don't know if we still have access to, but
I've got it right here. So this is something actually that I shared in the chat as we were setting this up. And I just asked Ben, is this a good example of what you would say, a good summary of your beliefs here? So claims about Holocaust deniers. So this is just kind of to those people who are worried that anti-Semites are just spewing hatred. This is, and this is not necessarily representative of everyone, but this is a good example of what people on the internet are trying to say. So they deny that Jews were persecuted. No, they do not deny that Jews were persecuted, even in some cases wrongly. They deny that Jews were deprived of civil rights. No, we do not. Nobody denies that Jews were deprived of civil rights. That's a matter of history. They deny that Jews were deported. No, it was one of the largest deportation events in human history. They deny that Jews were herded into ghettos. No, they do not deny. They deny the existence of concentration camps. No, in fact, the existence of concentration camps is not denied by anyone that I'm aware of. They deny that Jews were put to forced labor. No, they do not deny that. Labor sets free, so to speak. They deny the existence of crematoria and concentration camps. No, they do not deny that. They deny that Jews died in great numbers for many reasons, including epidemics, malnutrition, disease, and mistreatment. No, that is not denied. They deny that other minorities were also persecuted as well, such as the gypsies and political dissenters, most notably communists. No, that is not denied. What is actually denied? They deny that there was a plan to murder all Jews. This is something that is denied. They deny that Jews were murdered systematically. This is also something that is generally denied. They deny the existence of gas chambers utilized for mass murder. This is something that is denied. And they deny the 6 million Jews died in the Holocaust. This is something that is generally denied. So, why would somebody take these 4 points, these last 4 things, a systematic plan, a systematic murder, gas chambers for murder, and the number of 6 million? The easiest to tackle is the 6 million number. There were only 5 million Jews in Europe at the beginning of the war. Well, it's almost 6, 5.8 million. At the end of the war, there were 5 million Jews in Europe. If 6 million Jews died, they sure propagated pretty heavily in the meantime.
It was more after the war than before the war.
Yeah, there were more after the war than before the war. And that's with huge numbers fleeing to the United States and to the Levant. And as a matter of fact, most of the Jews that left Germany left with the blessing and funding of the government to the Levant via the railway that ran through Turkey up until the point when that was destroyed. And that's when people started being put into camps. So one of the things that is believed by the people who deny the Holocaust as written is that these people were planned to be deported. That deportation route was shut, and they were begun to be put into camps. And in those camps, they were derived of rights. They were often abused. They were forced to work against their will. These were all normal things. Even in the United States, camps were utilized for wartime labor. And these people were compensated for their work in some ways, some more legitimate than others. But, it is a fact of history that our nations, the European world, was mobilized like it never had been before for military production. And prison labor was used on both sides of the ocean. Even, I mean, in Asia as well, everywhere. Prison labor was utilized for wartime manufacturing. That is not unique to Germany. So, Ben, when we showed that graphic there, would you say that is a pretty decent summarization? Maybe a quibble here or a quibble there, but a decent summarization of your perspective.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm.
So that is not to say that these people were never deprived of their rights, that these people were never abused. These things certainly happened, and it is regrettable. And nobody is gloating in that. Nobody is finding that to be funny.
I think that the reason that a lot of these things, because most people who have never heard of this, of any of these points of contention, will hear how can you even question this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is connected. So the question about 6 million being the number, give or take, right? Nobody's going to throw you in jail for saying 5 million, or 5.9 million, whatever decimal. But the reason that that's questioned is there would have to be some kind of evidence. There would have to be like a mass grave, just huge mass grave like you've never seen.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't exist. So,
as a matter of fact, every time people try to find the mass graves, Jewish organizations shut them down.
Yeah.
So there are the famous shoes on the bank of the river in Vienna, Austria, and allegedly, a bunch of Jewish children were lined up on the edge of this river, just like hundreds of children or some nonsense number like that, and then just shot in the back of the head and dumped into the Donau. And that's the scene of this awful alleged occurrence. And multiple companies have said, hey, we would love to go in there and recover these bodies and give them a religious burial. And Jewish organizations have stopped them and said, no, you can't dig up those bodies because that would be against our religion. Whereas in multiple other places, these same people with the exact same religion get dug up and reburied and moved all the time, and that's not an issue. But in these special cases, anytime you go to look for bodies that are allegedly there are all these religious objections, and you're being uncaring toward the dead in these special cases, which makes absolutely no sense. And it's just the combination of time and time again, such as, if all of these bodies were burned in crematoria, there would be an ash pile visible from space. It would have chemically altered the soil in a way that would be noticeable for hundreds of years, and yet neither of those things are true.
Well, hold on. You're even getting ahead there, because the reason that the ovens have to exist is because some way they got rid of the bodies. Well, how did they do that? They did it with ovens, right?
Yeah.
So where are the ovens? Well, here's 4 of them. Okay, where's the other oven? You know what I mean? Like, it becomes this snowball thing of like, where's it going? And like you were saying, like the soil samples. We've done the soil samples. We can't find anything there. But I mean, these are all like, there's so many little things like this that are connected, and the can just gets kicked down the road until you basically just have to say it is illegal for you to question this. And it's a very, George Orwell type situation where if you don't say that 2 + 2 = 6 million, you're going to jail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a good example of, Ben mentioned earlier, memes have the power to change people's minds. It's because of things like this. It says, if I take 1 hour to cook a batch of cookies and the Cookie Monster has 15 ovens working 24 hours a day, every day for 5 years, how long does it take the Cookie Monster to make 6 million batches of cookies? And so he gets down to the math here. And it would have taken 16,666 2/3 days. If you divide that by 365 days a year, you'll get the answer that will be wrong. You didn't account for leap years, but I guarantee you he's going to need a lot more years than 5 to make 6 million batches of cookies. So point here being, no matter how you slice it, the numbers don't add up. There's something isn't right here. And when you start questioning that, if you live in a country such as Finland or the United Kingdom or Germany or France or Poland, you can be thrown in jail for pointing out the fact that these things don't make sense, that there is an obvious lie being foisted upon people for nefarious reasons. So, I mean, and that was not in the show plan. That was just something that, as we were talking about it, I Googled Cookie Monster Holocaust meme, and it's boom right there. Very easy to find. And that is one thing that's very worrying to people who are trying to control a narrative, is that the internet is not controllable. It's very easy to find people questioning things, raising issues and saying, hey, this doesn't make sense. What you're saying doesn't align with what we understand to be the way the world works in reality.
Yeah. I would have a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The reason the left can't meme is because a meme gets a point across very easily without having to frame things. It's just like a very short meme. You can read it within like 5 seconds. It gets a point across, very logical. It gets something across. The left can't meme because they have to always frame for like 2 hours a certain situation before they can get anything across. That's why the left can't meme. They can't get a quick, hard truth over within 5 seconds. That's why Doug Wilson needs his word salads. Why does he need word salads? Well, because he has to frame things in 1,000 words before he gets anything across.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of Doug Wilson, we have an interaction here that I wanted to share. It's an interaction with Doug Wilson and our very own Sean.
Hey.
In which Sean says, "Hey Siri, what's a Kafka trap?" in reference to this latest post from Doug Wilson. And Wilson responds to it. He says, "It certainly is a Kafka trap for those who try to contradict me in a particular way, the way it usually goes, in other words." And he keeps on talking there, so that's a comma, not a period. So even in his own interactions, he is admitting that he is not communicating honestly. He is admitting that he is being surreptitious, that he is being obtuse, and that he is trying to trap people, that he is being deceptive. And that's quite a wild thing for a man to admit out in the open like that.
For those not familiar with what a Kafka trap is, it is similar to the does your mama know you're gay question, because no matter how you answer that, it's going to make you look like you're admitting you're gay. It's one of those kind of thing. It's a I don't even remember exactly what it was about that article.
It's a question that presupposes the end. When did you stop beating your wife? And right. It presupposes the thing that you want to prove without ever having to argue for it. And then Doug Wilson comes out and he's like, "Oh yeah, it does that. Yeah, it does that." So
yeah, it was weird. What does that even mean? The way that people contradict me in a particular way of saying that your framing is garbage. Is that that what proves that? I don't know.
Very, very odd. Very odd. And like Ben was saying, word salad. It certainly is a Kafka trap for those who try to contradict me in a particular way, the way it usually goes. In other words, say, what are you trying to say? Why don't you just get out and say it? Be honest with your audience about what it is you're trying to communicate. But
can I real quick, since we're bringing up Doug Wilson, any of these guys that are part of this group that are going after people like the people that we've mentioned, right? Who are involved in this specific spat. I would like to ask them, if they happen to be listening, they're probably not, but what defines Holocaust denial is my question, because I would say that Holocaust denial starts at denying anything that it came out of the Nuremberg trials. If you deny anything, and we've seen this back and forth on, there was a one of those like daytime talk shows from the maybe late 80s, early 90s, but they had like a Holocaust expert, and then they had Holocaust survivors up there. And this lady or this guy goes up there and he's like, they're taking questions from the audience, and he says, yeah, nobody actually believes that like lampshades were being made from Jewish skin. And this lady who was a Holocaust survivor is like, no, I've seen them. I saw the skin lampshades and whatever. Well, is that guy who's an expert and a defender of the Holocaust narrative, is that guy a denier?
His role on the panel was to be the person defending the narrative.
Yeah.
And even his defense of the narrative was not, it was not enough.
Yeah. Or another one is my favorite example is the idea that they would throw a Jew into a cage with a bear
and an eagle.
A bear and an eagle. Yeah. And the bear, I wasn't sure of how the order of that was, but essentially the bear would kill the person and like eat them. And then the eagle would pick his bones clean. Yeah. Someone in the chat is saying Montel Williams show. That is correct. Yeah. It was Montel Williams. You probably still find that somewhere. But it's
probably not on YouTube, but you can find it.
But that is my question. If you don't believe the eagle and bear story, are you a Holocaust denier? Mm-hmm. And if so, do you believe?
I think what happens is most people have never actually dealt with the issue. They've been browbeaten in school. They've been told 6 million, 6 million, 6 million their entire life. They've never actually thought about it. They go to the movie theater and they watch this movie where it's all black and white except for the one girl with the color coat. And then, it pulls on their heartstrings and they go home and old Uncle Remus goes, yeah, I don't know about that. And they're like, oh, how could you? You're just so evil.
Even narratives.
Programming is a powerful tool.
It is.
Yeah. Even, is it Eli Wiesel? Is that the guy's name who wrote Night?
I don't know.
Even he said before, well, the book is called Night. And even he said before he died that the idea of like this huge burn pit where they would just shoot people and drop them off into this burn pit, that was just, it wasn't literally true. It was some other kind of true, right? Which means it was false. He made it up.
Yeah.
He felt like there was a giant burn pit there where people were being thrown in or shot and then thrown in or whatever. But there's so many narratives like that. And people who have read Night, they think that's the fifth gospel right there. Like that is God's own truth that came down from heaven. And even the author admitted that it wasn't 100% accurate. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, well, I mean, that gets kind of to the power of memes. One of the reasons that I think people are so upset by memes is because some people have been in control of Hollywood and the newspapers ever since World War II, and actually before World War II. And those people have a vested interest in the Holocaust narrative. And memes are made by hoi polloi. They're made by you and me and Billy Bob down the street. They're made by average Joes who are just asking questions. And it's an uncontrolled narrative. And when you get that, you do get some stupid people. I mean, you get flat earthers. People who sincerely believe with all their might that if you believe the earth is round, then you're going to hell. Kind of in the way that Tobias believes if you share a meme, then you're going to hell. Or Doug Wilson believes if you share this meme, then you're going to hell. These same people will believe that if you believe that the earth is round, you are going to hell, because the only Christian position is the flat earth. You do get some of those. But mostly what you get is a bunch of people who are arriving at the truth by asking questions. Isn't that, what we laud in the West is the Socratic method, right? Asking questions, asking people to think about, their preconceived notions, observe your own ideas, and be sure that they're legitimate. Is it really that bad to do such a thing?
I have a question for Ben. You had used in like the first couple minutes, you had used the specific term church split. I just want to clarify. I'm not sure if you know that in English that has a very specific meaning, but you would use that word. Was there a church split somewhere over this?
Not a local church split, but like a global church split.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Kind of like just there are two camps now that do not like each other, and it was probably coming a long time. The meme was probably just revealing things that would happen anyway, but it was definitely a big catalyzer. So
yeah, and there is a very real split between Moscow and Ogden, and their satellites in Phoenix, Arizona, and in Georgetown. Ogden and Georgetown have gone one way. Moscow and Phoenix have gone another, and it's a very real split. And this was the catalyst. This meme, this explosion was the catalyst of that split. But it was something coming. I mean, we saw it with the White Boy Summer videos, just people out to have a good time. And it caused a huge amount of consternation to the point where people said to other people, if you do not recant of the White Boy Summer Meme Brigade, if you do not, and they named people by name, if you do not recant of the White Boy Summer Meme Brigade, the doors will be shut to you of Moscow. And that certainly happened. So it is, like you said, a very real church split in the American Reformed Church anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they expected repentance, and no repentance ever came because we're not going to repent. And at this point, it's probably very important to say, because that was a lot on Twitter and so on. The church member repented. And I would just want to say what exactly that was referring to. Joel had initially put that out, but that had nothing to do with anything I said in the Zoom call. That was concerning things I had private conversations with Joel about. But let me say clearly, I do not retract anything I said in the Zoom call. I do not repent of anything I said in the Zoom call. And that's very important, because I just want to get the narrative right. I will not feel ashamed what the scriptures, what the church fathers, what the reformers and my German ancestors said about the Jews and their lies. I will not feel ashamed for it. I will not retract anything. I will not repent of it. I just want to make that very clear, because that kind of became a part of the narrative. Well, the church member repented. Well, that was referring to other things that I had talked to Joel about in private conversations, not to anything I said in the Zoom call or so.
Yeah, and there was a moment in the Zoom call when you said something to the effect of, "Well, I'm sorry if that made you upset, but that wasn't what I intended." And I don't know about you, but my mother, when I was being raised, told me that if I say, "I'm sorry that you're upset," that isn't a real apology, because you're actually you're putting the onus, so to speak, on the receiver. You're saying, you're the person who was upset by this. It was not my doing.
Yeah, I'm sorry your feelings got hurt.
Yeah, that's not exactly an apology of sorts. It's sort of like that meme, right? I'm sorry, but the human sacrifices will stop. You're not actually sorry. You're just, you're commiserating a little bit. Yeah, you got some hurt feelings, but sorry, that life moves on.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to bring up specifically that you repent of or that you recant in some way?
Well, so before the Zoom call, way before the Zoom call, I already had like hours of conversations with Joel about this. Joel was kind of new to the topic too, you know. He also got red pilled. I guess Twitter also played a big role there, and so without going into too many specifics, but basically what Joel said, Benjamin took the red pill bottle. He took the entire bottle at once. So he went overboard a little bit. You know, are a few things where you can go a little overboard. You can be a little too dogmatic whether Adolf Hitler was a born again Christian or not. You know, so you can go a little overboard on things, but it's not that I ever repented of anything I said in the Zoom call. I still believe that. Um, what the scriptures say about the Jews. I still believe what church tradition and Christianity has always said about the Jews until like 80 years ago.
That they are blasphemers, that they are the enemy of mankind, and they prevent the gospel in every place that we go. That was said by not only the church fathers, but by the Apostle Paul himself.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I see a question here in the chat. I would love to know what Ben's take on Eli releasing the whole thing is. So I said earlier, we showed a text between Joel and me that we never set up Tobias for the Zoom call to see him fail. We never had ill will towards him, and we never had the intention of publishing it. It was solely for the purpose of self-defense. Now, it got leaked, unfortunately, to Eli, and he released the whole thing, which, in the end, I think that's fine. I think that helped to clarify things, to let everyone see the receipts, to let everyone know what was actually said, to go and fact-check themselves. I think it's something that was actually good. We didn't want to release it actually because we still did not want the war with Tobias. We still had somewhat of hopes maybe there would be reconciliation and none of this would be necessary, you know. So it was actually blowing up Tobias's reputation, the release of the Zoom call, and we actually didn't want that. So we had
Tobias, Tobias is a man who has done good work. We started this by talking about the fact that during COVID lockdowns, he was an absolute titan about standing up to the government and meeting in secret, like an underground church. People having to park far away from the church and walk to it because they knew that the police would come and shut them down. That takes a man with, cojones. That takes a man with real stones to do that. And he's
sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just it really is not something to be relished to see somebody who has done such great work to blow up his own reputation, to self-destruct in this way. And you mentioned, we had hoped at that time that there could still be reconciliation. There still could be reconciliation. I know I'm saying this as someone who's an outsider. I'm not either Ben or Joel or Tobias, but there could still be reconciliation if certain people would get over the fact that some people are not going to believe a narrative. And
absolutely,
even if you are as convinced of that narrative as you possibly could be, it doesn't have to be that you anathematize anyone who doubts the story that you believe. I have seen people less upset about blasphemy of the Trinity than over this. Dr. White will debate Muslims in a mosque. He will debate Trinitarian heretics, but he will not debate this. This is beyond the pale. This is something that, if you believe this, you are so beyond the pale that you're not even worth talking to. You should be immediately put out of the church. And it's very, very, very unwise and very hypocritical, the way that these people have behaved. And but it is something that is absolutely forgivable.
Yes, absolutely.
Reconciliation can still be had.
Absolutely. And I would actually see something redeeming in Tobias just because of the fact that a lot of it is probably programming, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I still believe there's a lot of sin there, a lot of misrepresentation and lying. But then I also believe that a lot of the things he lied about are things I said in the Zoom call that he was programmed to hear something different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is actually somewhat redeeming of his character. I think there needs to be definitely repentance. Absolutely. Don't hear me wrong. Hear me wrong. But I would be all the quicker to forgive him just because I know. I mean, I'm a German. I've been raised in Germany. I know how the programming works. It's here too. You have a Holocaust museum in every city, in every major city. But it's way worse still in Germany. And so I know how the programming is, and that Tobias was just programmed to hear certain things. That doesn't excuse it, but it makes me all the quicker to forgive him if he sought that forgiveness. Yeah. But I just don't think that he is willing to do that just because he has his alliances with Booch, Durbin, and James White and Doug Wilson. He has those alliances that he would give up at that point. But we would absolutely immediately forgive him if there was forgiveness sought. And I would also put out some posts. Hey guys, stop mocking Tobias. There has been reconciliation. But honestly, unfortunately, he has founded a YouTube channel and re-uploaded that video, that hit piece that was proven to
Oh,
be
is
full
that
of lies.
right?
Yes.
Well,
So
we'll just have to find that then.
Yeah.
He uploaded it again. So there's nothing I can do at that point because you gotta repent. Yeah. And if you just re-upload a video that's proven to be filled with misrepresentations and lies, I don't know what to say.
He had kind of a mask off moment early on when talking about uploading that video and when he had taken it down, because he was saying how he wanted to have a English speaking audience, and he was like, well, this is a great opportunity to do that. So I was just kind of like, dude, you just said the quiet part out loud. That was quite a confession there.
Mm-hmm.
Which I wouldn't even condemn if that were part of your reasoning. I mean, everyone wants to build a platform. I'm happy about everyone who gives me a following on Twitter, and so is probably everyone. That in itself is not sinful. You want to have an influence on society, and hopefully a good influence, and share your thoughts, which hopefully helps others. That in itself, I don't believe is sinful to have the desire for a platform,
Mm-hmm.
and for more followers, all of that. But obviously, you can't lie about it or do it while trampling on other people's reputations, lying about them,
Yeah. All right. Well, if you are in the live chat, guys, now is the time to send in your questions. I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start just at the top. And there's some stuff that's a bit of filler, but by the time we read through it, more people will have gotten in their questions and stuff. Ben, did you have any last point that you wanted to make before we get into the comments?
I see Papa Alpaca in the chat. Hiya, Papa Alpaca. And just so the audience knows, I'm not to be confused with Papa Alpaca. I'm also an alpaca, but we graze in different parts of the U.S.
Can I ask what the because I know like a lot of people on Twitter or X will use animals to like signify different groups. What is the alpaca one? I almost added one to my X this week.
I just like them.
Oh.
Yeah, and I believe didn't you? I don't believe you were aware of Papa Alpaca when you chose that moniker.
Yeah.
Is it the case, or were you aware of him at that point, or?
I may have seen some of his posts, but I've never met him or so. It was more just coincidence that we chose the same animal. And actually, once this blew up, Nαžι put out like some post that I shared, probably the only and last time I ever share something by Nαžι. He put something out like, is like Alpaca the new Peep the Frog, you know?
Oh, Pepe.
The Pepe, yeah.
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 We have grown larger and furrier.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and start hitting these comments. Redemption Metagaming says, wow, showing the meme. Yes, indeed, we did share the meme. We showed it and we referenced it and we read it aloud, and we may never be employed. Yeah, we may never be employed in a banking institution from henceforth and forever. Ethan Holden, sorry if this has been said. I'm just tuning in now. This was a very clear example of Proverbs 18:17. The whole world was convinced of Tobias, James, and Doug's story until the audio was released. Alpaca and Joel were both fully vindicated. Yes, that is in fact the course of events. Proverbs 18:17, of course, being the passage that says, a man may seem right when he gives his side, but when he is questioned, the truth will come out, or something to that effect. Are you pulling it up, Sean?
Let me go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead and read it proper from the authorized King James.
From the old King.
Not Geoffrey's living paraphrase.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is also the verse.
First.
Sorry. I didn't.
Now, well, he that is first in his own cause seemeth just, but his neighbor cometh and searcheth him.
Yeah, which is also
like
what
the
Tobias
ESV version of this. Yeah.
Go ahead.
The one who states his case first seems right. The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him.
Yep. That's what cross-examination is all about. James White taught me that cross-examination is where the real debate unfolds, and that is definitely what we saw here. You were saying about the King James, Ben?
I was saying that Tobias quoted that verse in his hit piece, because
that's right. In the video, he mentions that verse. You think you're right, but we're going to cross-examine you, and then the audio of the video gets released, and boom, his video gets pulled because, well, when it got cross-examined, it was not nice.
And also, Tobias was the first one to make it public. He went on the Chris Arnson show, Iron Sharpens Iron. He went on Eschatology Matters, and he was the first one to make it public. And then came Joel's defense video, and then came Tobias's hit piece. So he was actually the first one to state his case, and then Joel was the one who responded to it.
Yeah, and the reason that video got pulled was because of the video recording that you made, that was shared with Joel, and then I believe it was Joel shared it with Eschatology Matters, who I forget the name of the gentleman who runs that channel, but he looked at it and he said, yeah, this is incontrovertible. At this point, we cannot make an argument that this is a lie, and it got pulled from his website.
And they actually fired one of their guys over it. They were working with a guy named Jacob Tanner, who then they didn't want to work with anymore, and who is now working on the other side with Tobias, Joe Boot, and so on to make hate videos against us.
Well, that is unfortunate. Alex Olahar says the loss of being able to generalize is almost exclusively tied to World War II and the CRA. Well, we were talking about, being able to generalize in the context of all Cretans are liars and Jews do not have honest jobs. The fact that you can say all Cretans are liars doesn't necessarily apply to 100% of Cretans. Just like at the time you can say, or right now you can say pornography is a Jewish organization. Hollywood is a Jewish industry. These things are true in the broad scheme of things. But of course, there are Italians who are filmmakers as well, who are not Jewish. And of course, there are, pornographers who are from Switzerland, per se. But the vast majority of these people are Jewish. And being unable to generalize, he says, almost exclusively tied to World War II and the CRA. I don't know what the CRA is, but I'll take.
I was also wondering what the CRA is.
Let me type it into Google real quick.
Can't just be putting acronyms in the chat, bro.
Yeah. Next thing you know, we're going to be saying slurs.
Yeah.
It is a Community Reinvestment Act. It's a federal law that encourages depository institutions to help meet the credit needs of the communities in which they operate. I don't think that's what he was talking about, but Godspeed to you, Olahar, or Olajar. I'm not sure exactly how you say your name, but
Civil Rights Act.
Oh, Civil Rights Act.
Oh,
yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Seaside Life says, "Hey guys, fashionably late. Kudos to you, my guy." Seaside Life says, "Why is it a sin to put people in a camp if race and nation are the same thing? Italians were put in camps too, right? We were at war with the Italians." This is something that is overlooked. I might be getting the numbers wrong here, but wasn't it something like 8 million Americans of German and Italian origin were put into concentration camps in the United States?
They were large camps.
It's an astronomical number of German and Italian American citizens who were put into camps for the exact same reason that Jewish people in Germany were put into camps. And, but you don't hear about that. You never hear about that in your school programs. You don't see the photographs of shoes, and for some reason, when one side did it, it was a-okay, and when the other did it, it was the worst thing that has ever happened in the history of ever. It's quite.
Even Spielberg doesn't make movies about it.
That's right. If Steven Spielberg made movies about it, you would know about it.
I will say, Mr. Miyagi's wife dies in Manzanar, so that's the only movie I can think of that even comes close to mentioning it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The Karate Kid is the movie.
Yeah, and that's somebody who's Japanese, so that's not even about the Europeans.
Yeah.
Very few people know about the Japanese internment camps, and even they are people who are more. Those people are more in tune historically. Practically no one knows about the German and Italian internment camps. I didn't know about them at all until I was talking to an old man in my community who was ethnically German. He was like, "Oh yeah, they sent me to a camp up in Gatesville. They had a big German camp there." I was like, "Oh, like for prisoners of war?" And he said, "No, it was Americans." And that's, up the road from me, like an hour away from me. There is a town that is known for having a big prison in it because that prison got turned into a prison after the war when it was no longer an internment camp. So now it's a woman's prison. But during the war, it was a concentration camp. No gas chambers, but, it was a concentration camp. Seaside Life says, the alliance doesn't make sense biblically speaking, regardless of errors. I think he was talking about when we were talking about, if there's repentance, we could come back together. He may be talking about something else. We're not sure. Guys, if you're leaving a chat, try and give a little more context. Seaside Life, again, I personally had to deal with this at work this week. I have people from my past employer telling staff at my new one I am a Nazi. And then he's got the little laughing, crying face there. Yeah, this is something that's going to follow you. If you go down this rabbit hole, especially if you start talking about it publicly. My boss was informed of my views, and thankfully, he just kind of shrugged it off. And he was like, okay. So I'm very fortunate that way. Most people do not have bosses that don't care about such things. They're going to hunt you to the end of the world, especially if your boss is a woman. If you are so unfortunate as to have a boss who is a woman, if she finds out about this, you are cooked, my guy. Seaside Life, sometimes keeping it simple, meme, is the best way to... And he stops there.
Go.
I'm sure Yeah, the magic of memes is keep it simple and straightforward. Alex Olehar, sorry. Doug is the worst. No, German sausage is the worst. The word soap, Rabbi Wilson. I prefer calling him Pope Wilson because he acts more like a pope than a rabbi. Wes Show says Montel Williams show. Yes, that was reference to. There were a couple different shows that had some very interesting counter narrative things going on. I don't remember which show it was, but there was this one show where they got some young black children and some young white children, school age, middle school age, and they just got them, doing the kind of thing that daytime TV tries to do, which is institute a scream fest between the two and create a bunch of drama. And it was all about, race grievance this and race grievance that. You white people brought us here in slavery. And one of the young white girls, curly red hair, looked like an Irish girl. She said, "No, the Jews brought you here." And everybody's just shocked. And, she's just pointing out something that's been lost to history, but is actually true, that the slave ships that brought the Jews to the New World were predominantly owned by Jews. And as a matter of fact, in the news a couple of years ago, there was a slave ship that was discovered, and it was full of gold, and Spain was claiming the gold. And the nation of Israel laid claim to the gold and said, "No, Spain, you can't have that gold that's on that Spanish slave ship," because the owner of the ship was Jewish. So somehow Israel gets to claim the gold because the slaver was Jewish. So it was a little bit of a mask-off moment there. West Show says, "No, Uncle Steven Spielberg said the Holocaust was real because he made a movie called Schindler's List." I didn't watch that movie because it had a sex scene in it, and my parents didn't let me watch garbage. So, look what happened to me. So if you raise your children right and you don't let them watch pornographic Jewish propaganda, your children too can grow up to be Holocaust-denying anti-Semites that Doug Wilson says are going to hell. Seaside Life says, from ChatGPT just now, final answer. Approximately 40,908 adult crematoriums could perform in 4 years with 3 chambers running 24/7 at 2.5 hours per cremation.
He's just trying to do the math.
That's way more crematoriums than they had. First off, they had 4, not 40,000, not 41,000.
I'm going to put this up here because you didn't read it the way that he said it.
Sorry if I misread that.
40,000 adult cremations could be performed in 4 years with 3 chambers running 24/7 at 2.5 hours per cremation. Yeah,
I see. So that's pretty far from 6 million. 41,000 is pretty far from 6 million.
Speaking of the power of memes, the first time I ever heard the 4 ovens thing was that video where the guy comes in and he's like, "Boss, this guy wants us to make 6 million pizzas." And that was...
We can't. We've only got 4 ovens.
Yeah, that was the first time I ever heard that. And then it became a rabbit hole after that. So the power of memes is to get you to make you do your own research, really. I mean...
Yeah, and they operate they operate off of a little bit of humor. The idea of somebody ordering 6 million pizza pies and, "Boss, what are we going to do? We only got 4 ovens." It's like that. That's funny. Yeah. And so it makes you chuckle, and then you start asking questions. Am I spinning in space?
Look at the username, though.
The word soap.
Yeah, because we were talking about how the Nuremberg trials say that Jewish fat was turned into soap, which is just
silly. Why would people who are known for being meticulously clean, who look down on the Jewish race as being dirty, allegedly, why would they be making them into soap to wash their bodies with? It's just logically incoherent. Also, it's not like they had a shortage of animal fats. Why would they seek out human fat? And I've heard conflicting reports. Some people say human fat can't be used. Some people say it can. I've never tried. As a matter of fact, I don't think any German has ever tried. I'll say that here.
A lot of this is just filler. I know we kind of quoted this one that I have up on the screen here, but I wanted to see if this actually got mentioned, because the second part of this is how Eli came to own this recording. Because for those who don't know, this was a private recording. It was shared among a very few amount of people. And then Eli McGowan put it out there. Like, he had a recording of it, I don't believe a video, but he had the audio, and he just put it out there on the internet for everyone to see. And so that's how most people came to hear about it. Ben, do you have thoughts on how he came to own that recording?
Do you want me to name names?
That's up to you, buddy.
I could name names. I won't, but I could.
Yeah.
Well, Joel shared it in a Signal chat, in a Signal group, because he wanted some anons to know the truth behind it, to defend him. Because this was a big attack coming against him, with high-profile names, Doug Wilson and all these folks coming against him. So he wanted to defend himself, and so he shared the recording in a Signal chat with a bunch of anons, and one of them, fortunately, decided to hate on Joel and release it to Eli.
Yeah. So if you have sensitive material, OPSEC 101, do not share it with people you do not know IRL.
Yep.
All right. There are things that I put into a group chat that I do not want the world to see, that are just for friends. If the world sees them, it's not the end of the world, kind of like this. But the people in that group chat are all people I know in real life. You know, I know their spouses, I know their kids, kind of like Ben. You know, we know each other in real life. That's how we got to know each other in the first place. This is not complicated, guys. Don't air your dirty laundry.
Yeah.
We'll speed through some of these nonsense. West show, Christ reigns over earth and it's his footstool. But if we go,
that's all. It's all nonsense.
My guy, read C.S. Lewis, Out of the Silent Planet. Jesus is there too. You can't get away from God. Jonah couldn't get away from God. You can't either. Let's see. So this is Seaside with the follow-up. It's not letting me pin stuff, which means we're about to maybe get reset.
Yeah, we are close to the 2-hour mark, so that's why I'm trying to hurry things up.
We start having problems when this runs too long. It would take 58,000 years, 59,000 years to cremate 600 million people with just 3 cremation chambers running nonstop, one body at a time every 2.5 hours.
Well, yeah, 600 million people is a lot more than...
There's a good documentary that touches on the method of cremation that is alleged, which is not even legitimate crematoriums. And it's called 1/3 of the Holocaust. If you watch it, it is very thorough. And sometimes he reaches a little further than maybe he should. But at the end of it, you're going to come away being like, okay, yeah, this didn't happen. Papa Alpaca, hey, I know that guy.
During COVID, there was an article.
Hi, fellow Alpaca.
During COVID, you're saying?
During COVID, there was an article that came out that caught the attention of people like ourselves, where in Germany, they were complaining that they didn't have enough ovens to cremate all the millions of bodies that are dying from COVID. Mm-hmm. And people were just kind of like, wait a second, what do you mean? What do you mean it's impossible to do this?
You Germans don't know how to cremate a couple 100,000 bodies.
Yeah.
All right. Alex Olahar, while we're talking about symbols, can someone explain the Christmas tree thing? I'm new.
Yeah, somebody explain in the chat.
I think people put... oh, yeah, he's talking about the Appeal to Heaven, which is an early American flag. Yeah. Civil Rights Act. Yep, sorry, guys. I thought you were base enough My apologies. I'm retarded. Olear. Alex Olear. So that J is silent, but it's completely silent. Olear. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm sorry for
It's
mispronouncing, but I've got you now. Papa Alpaca says this is known. All right.
Yeah, I thought there would be more to the story than
Yeah.
just there was an anon in the signal, and I didn't know that. So.
Yeah. It was. Well, it was bad OPSEC is what it was. There was there's a reason that it wasn't the video, it was the audio, because I think that was tactically done just so that if it did get out, it wouldn't be completely damaging. I have the video, and I wonder if I don't think the full video has ever been released. Ben, do you know, has somebody posted the full video on their
No.
YouTube?
No.
Yeah. I wonder if with a little bit of face editing, just to keep your face out of it, if such a thing would be allowed on our channel, because I'm sure people would like to see it. But there are other sensitive things that might be in that recording, so we'd have to give it a comb over just to be sure. Alex Oliar, we Ukrainian, and they didn't want anyone to think we were Russian when we came in through Ellis Island. Oh, okay. So it's the spelling is a Ukrainian anti-Russian thing. We came in mid-1910s when the Reds were on the come up. Well, that's a good time to get out. From what I understand, Ukraine did not fare very well after that. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions, guys. If y'all have any more questions, throw them in the comments real quick.
While we're waiting for that, I actually did have a question. You had mentioned that you shared a Hitler speech with Tobias. And the question I have, because, for Americans like myself who only speak English, it's been a big deal that AI can now put Hitler speeches into English with Hitler voice, which is incredible technology. But it's one of those things where people have put them online. They're like, well, this is just historically important. But people listen to this and they've said, wow, why didn't the History Channel ever put subtitles on these speeches? They would just, have angry German guy up there saying things that we don't understand. But obviously you and Tobias are German speakers. So is there a general knowledge of what Hitler's speeches were actually about within German-speaking people?
No. It's not taught in public school. I guess you can find some of his speeches on YouTube, but a lot of it gets banned. But it's not anything you ever hear about in the common narrative. No. I went 12 years through 12 years of high school in Germany and never heard a Hitler speech or anything like that. Never ever.
What? Do you remember any of the content of the specific speech that you had shared with Tobias?
Yeah, it was an excerpt from one of his first speeches after he took power. I wonder if I could put it on the screen, but it may not be good quality enough for the screen share to actually show the subtitles. So it was from an excerpt from a speech in 1933, where he just talks about the decay of the Weimar Republic, the moral decay, and how
the fact that children were being prostituted in the streets to homosexuals, and that the people that were doing this prostituting and pimping were primarily ethnically Jewish, which is a fact of history that is not debated. And transgenderism.
And then the excerpt is about how we were made to hate our ancestors, hate our forefathers, hate the great men of German history, hate all of them. And yeah, it's definitely something every Christian should agree with. Yeah, Tobias made some big point about, yeah, you could kind of agree, but the motives behind it were wrong. Hitler's idol was Germanness and not Christianity, and so we actually are not supposed to agree, because Hitler's motivation behind saying this was having a high view of Germanness and not of Christianity, which doesn't make sense. Germanness is Christian. We have been Christian for 1500 years. Yeah. Shortly after the Western Roman Empire fell apart, Germany has become Christian, and has certainly become even more Christian under Charlemagne. And probably the first big step into Christianization was under Clovis the First in the 6th century, converting to Christianity. But definitely Charlemagne brought it much further. Eventually, it evolved into the Holy Roman Empire. Yes, Germanness is Christian. There's nothing to feel ashamed about Germanness and about the German race. It is a Christian race.
Yeah.
So,
in fact, the Reformation came out of Germany. So,
yeah,
we people who are of the Reformed faith, and I know Sean will balk at being lumped in there, but the Reformation began in Germany, and it spread to the entire world.
The good stream of the Reformation happened in Germany. Let's just go with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm partial to the Dutch Reform myself.
Yeah. So Tobias made a big point about, yeah, you're actually not supposed to agree because of Hitler's motives behind it being him loving Germany and Germanists and not loving Jesus, which it's
amazing that he can read someone's heart that way from so far
Yeah.
away, and so many decades separated, that he can read the heart of a man whom he never met, whom he only knows by reputation whom he only knows by the reputation of his enemies. In fact, pretty incredible.
Yeah, it really bothers me when people do this. Like, oh, you're just, your God is whiteness or Germanness or Americanness or whatever. But if you truly are a Christian, you're going to want your kinsmen according to the flesh to be Christian. Yeah, to the point that you would cut yourself off for the sake of your kinsmen according to the flesh. And if you don't like that language, that is the Apostle Paul's language. When he talks about his people, at least in one context, he's talking about his kinsmen according to the flesh, which is your race of people. And there's no denying that Paul loved his specific race of people, which would be the Jews. It's such a crazy thing to just
it has the same energy as, well, you're making an idol out of the family.
Yeah.
These same people who are like, well, be sure you're not making an idol out of going to church every Sunday. It's like, well, he's making an idol out of making Germany a Christian nation.
Yeah.
So, this is absurd, and it's disingenuous, dishonest all the way down, and not to be taken seriously. When people say things like, well, the things he was saying are right, but I don't like his tone. What they actually mean is, I don't like what he's saying. When they say, yeah, you're doing the righteous thing, but you're making an idol out of it, what they're actually saying is, I don't like the fact that you're obeying God when I'm not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, totally disingenuous. All right. Well, it looks like that's it for the comments.
We've gone through them all
now. Yeah. So I will go ahead and hang up on those guys. Ben, did you have any closing remarks before we sign off?
I would have so much more to say if we had. I would have probably 10 more hours. Let me just throw in a few facts there that people didn't know yet. After Tobias went on the Chris Owenson show,
you're covering up your mic again.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. You said after Tobias.
after Tobias went on the Chris Arnson show, I fronted him about it, sent him a voicemail, asked him, "Hey, what are you doing?" I've explained it very.
We may have lost you. Ben, are you there? What a way to end the show.
It's showing him that he's there.
Hello, hello.
I turned off his mic. He's got it back on.
Can you hear me?
Now you sound like you're a million miles away.
All right, let's see.
Now? Can you hear me now?
All right, I can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have a million more things to say. Just let me throw in a few more facts. After Tobias went on the Chris Arnson show, I actually confronted him about it. First of
Tobias,
all, because
you mean, not Arnson.
Tobias. And I confronted him about it and said, first of all, in the Zoom call, you said you would not take this anywhere else before you talk to me again, which never happened. And so the next thing after the Zoom call, where he said, before I take this anywhere else, I will confront you again. This never happened. And the next thing I hear is him going publicly with this. I confronted him about it. He just brushed it off, didn't care, didn't want to hear it. There's so many more things that I could say that make this all the more crazy, but I think the public knows enough by now to make a decent judgment. But also we are always to be open for forgiveness. I have very little hope that this will happen, because that would take a lot of humility, and he would probably betray his new alliance, you know.
His platform would suffer.
Yeah, but I mean, but it would be the honest thing to do, and I would always be open to that. I just don't think the chances of that happening are very high. He believes I need to repent, you know.
Well, and that is one thing that is consistent with these back and forths. You know, the separation of Moscow and Ogden. You know, the denunciations by these people who believe that we're the woke right, although there's nothing woke about our right, just like there's nothing Judeo about our Christian. You know, one side is reaching out to the other with open arms.
Yes.
I still enjoy Doug Wilson's teaching, some of it. His sexual ethics stuff is suspect, but that's because he gets it from a guy who's pretty bad. But a lot of his culture war stuff is quite excellent. You know, the reason Ogden exists is because Moscow exists.
Yeah.
The reason Georgetown exists is because Moscow exists. And we love him for it. And, you know, James White, despite the fact that he freaks out about the post-war consensus stuff, you know, I love his church history stuff. I love his Greek stuff. He's been a huge benefit to myself and Sean, both of us. We've been very, very heavily influenced by him. And it's when we're using their own standard against themselves, and we're saying, look, you are not rising to the standard that you have set for us. And we start trying to hold them to that, that things start going a little sideways. So we love them, and we wish nothing but the best for them. And you know, we're standing there with open arms, but they're the ones who will not have it. All right. Well, with that being said, I guess now is as good a time as any to go ahead and hang it up. I know it's been a long show, guys, and I appreciate you all sticking through to the end, those of you who are still here. It's not some of the most riveting and exciting material that we've gone over. A lot of it is just boring back and forth about, you know, who said this and then what happened next. And the reason that it's boring is because it never should have gone anywhere in the first place. This was a private conversation between two individuals who are friends, who may have had a political disagreement about history in the past, and it should have stayed as such. And the fact that it turned into an international fiasco with declarations that must be signed and denunciations and, you know, blasphemy, statements of blasphemy and, you know, disfellowship and disunity, all of this nonsense, did not need to occur, should not have occurred, as a matter of fact. And it really is amazing that something as simple as this got as far as it did, and quite unfortunate at that. But with that being said, there are things that you can do right now in your everyday life by following in obedience in Christ. There are good works that he has for us to do. And tomorrow is a day for doing them in. It is getting late, and it is a work day tomorrow. I know, Ben, you're a working man. I'm a working man. Sean, you're a working man. Sometimes the working men have to step in to set the record straight. But Monday morning, we're all going to be back at it. And I know that a lot of you listening will be too. So stay safe, get some rest tonight, and God be with you all. And everybody have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much, brothers.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on. Tschüss.
Yes.